So chocolate chip cookies are my favorite food. And over the years, I've collected a lot of recipes for them. And a bunch of them claim to be perfect or the best. And I knew they couldn't all be right. So my family and I decided to have a bake-off in which we'd figure out which recipe actually did make the best cookie. And I may be the one standing up here talking to you today, but my family and I did this project together from beginning to end. The first step and the most subjective step for this whole project was figuring out which cookies we're going to bake from our collection. And of course, we had to include the original Toll House cookie. This was invented by Ruth Wakefield back in the 1930s. And this is the recipe that you find on the back of the Nestle chocolate chip bag. And the story goes that she let them publish her recipe on the bag if they gave her a lifetime supply of chocolate. So I'm going to show you the pictures of all the other cookies we baked. And keep in mind that the same flour is in each of the picture for relative scale. So we baked a couple from cookbooks. This was from Bakewise, and this was the Search for the Perfect Chocolate Chip Cookie. 2 from the cooking magazine Cooks Illustrated. 2 from the New York Times. And several from the internet, including this copy of the Doubletree Hotel recipe, this Neiman Marcus rumor recipe from Snopes, the Savory Sweet Life blog recipe, and this from the cooking website, allrecipes.com. We also included a few from bakeries. We used one from Bountiful Bread here in Albany, New York, from the Placid Baker in Troy, New York, and from Mrs. Fields from a mall in Connecticut. And then we threw in a few store-bought cookies, Chips Ahoy, Freihofer's, and the Nestle pre-made dough that you get in those yellow tubes. So in the end, we had over 50 pounds of 17 different cookies. And you notice that we labeled each one with numbers. And that was so when we had our friends and family over for a tasting party, it was a blind tasting. And we asked everyone at the party to rate each cookie on a scale from 1 to 10, and then also let us know which recipe they wanted so they can try it at home. When we looked at the results, we found that the adults liked very different cookies than the children did, and this is the adult results. The gold bars show the average score for each cookie, and the dark brown bars show the number of adults who wanted to take home the recipe. The red dots show which cookies were from either bakeries or were store-bought. And you can see that they're over on the right, the lower-rated ones. So people liked home-baked cookies. The top-rated cookie over on the far left was from the cookbook Bakewise. And the second highest one was from Cooks Illustrated magazine. So as I was saying, this is the top-rated recipe. It's by Shirley Carrier in her cookbook Bakewise. And what was unique about this recipe is that it called for roasting pecans, and then you chop up the roasted pecans and mix it in with the flour. The second highest recipe, and it was second highest by just a whisker, and it had the highest number of people asking for the recipe, was by Charles Kelsey. And he's since left Cooks Illustrated and opened his own sandwich restaurant outside of Boston called Cuddy's, and it's been getting phenomenal reviews. But there's a couple of unique things about this recipe. One is that you take the butter and melt it and then brown it on the stovetop. And the other thing is that instead of creaming the sugar with the butter, as in all other recipes, you dissolve it in the liquids. Now, if any of these foods look good to you, you already know about 2 sets of chemical reactions that create complex flavors in foods. And I would propose to you that the reason that those 2 recipes ended up on top was because they created complex flavors. If you remember, the Bakewise recipe called for roasting the pecans. And that roasting process will drive what's called the Maillard reaction. The Maillard reaction is a reaction between amino acids, which make up proteins, and sugars at high temperature. And they result in the browning of foods and also the formation of hundreds of flavor The other set of chemical reactions is caramelization, and that's the pyrolysis of sugar. That means the decomposition of sugar at high temperature in the absence of oxygen. Thank you. Excuse me. And so the Cook's Illustrated recipe from Charles Kelsey called for browning the butter, and that browning process also drives the Maillard reaction. And he proposes that the dissolving of the sugar will drive the caramelization reaction. The children liked a very different cookie than the adults. You can see on this chart that the red dots, meaning the bakery and store-bought cookies, are over on the far left. This means that if you'd like to make children happy with chocolate chip cookies, you can save yourself a lot of time by just buying them one. Now, the highest rated cookie here was one that we did bake, but this one had the lowest baking temperature of all of them at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and that would minimize the caramelization process. So I think that what the story is here is that children just prefer a simpler, sweeter cookie. Now, if you'd like to make a good chocolate chip cookie, in addition to picking the best recipe, there's some techniques that you can use. Always bring your ingredients to room temperature before you use them. And that's because when you're creaming the butter, that will allow the butter to trap more air bubbles inside. If possible, use a recipe that will call for mass of ingredients instead of volume, and measure the ingredients on a kitchen scale. I always tell my kids, when you're cooking, it's okay to be creative, but when you're baking, you want to be precise because that's chemistry that you're doing. One exception to that is that it's okay to always throw in an extra splash of vanilla extract. Be careful when you're measuring the salt. We found from our tasting notes that women especially were very sensitive to the amount of salt in the cookies. Try refrigerating your dough for a day or two before you bake it. Always preheat your oven very thoroughly, and check the temperature with an oven thermometer. When you're baking, halfway through, rotate the cookie sheets top to bottom and spin them around. And the most important thing is always serve your cookies warm. So my favorite part of this whole project was getting to work with my kids, Maya and Albie, who are here today. And this wasn't really a science project in the sense that we didn't really have a negatable hypothesis to prove or disprove, but we got to practice using some scientific techniques. We talked about how to compare the cookies as fairly as possible. And to do that, we needed to minimize all the variations between them except for the recipes themselves. We figured out how to do the baking and the tasting party very carefully, and we had a set of procedures for both of them. For example, when we had the tasting party, we gave everyone a tasting sheet that told them the exact order to taste the cookies in, and the order was random on each sheet. That meant that when everyone got to cookie number 17, it wasn't always last, so people would be sick of eating chocolate chip cookies by that point. But I think the most important message that they got was that you can bring critical thinking skills to a problem that you can face in everyday life, even at home. I think that chocolate chip cookies are a quintessential American food, and they reflect American culture in a number of ways. Just like America is said to be the melting pot of the world, chocolate chip cookie ingredients come from all over the world. The wheat used for the flour and the poultry for the eggs originated in the Fertile Crescent. Sugar originated in Southeast Asia, and vanilla beans and cacao are native to Central and South America. Excuse me. And the technique for making cookies actually originated in Iran and was formalized in Europe. Just like with America, the origin story of chocolate chip cookies has some ambiguities to it. No one doubts that Ruth Wakefield, the owner and manager of the Toll House Inn in Whitman, Massachusetts, was central to their creation in the 1930s. But we don't know exactly how they were created. One story goes is that she was making her famous butter drop dew cookies, and they called for nuts. She ran out of nuts, so she chopped up a chocolate bar instead. Another story says that she usually used chocolate in her cookies, but it was baker's chocolate, which would melt in the cookies. She ran out of baker's chocolate, so she chopped up a chocolate bar instead, which would stay solid because it had a higher melting point. And then another story, which is told by the daughter of the head chef of the Toll House Inn, is that they were using a large commercial Hobart mixer to mix up the dough. And the vibrations from the mixer vibrated off some chocolate bars that were on a high shelf that fell into the dough, and they broke up and they used them. Whether we like it or not, businesses have always been and continue to be an integral part of American culture. And the chocolate chip cookie wasn't invented at home. The Toll House Inn was a large, successful restaurant. And people who ate there included the Kennedys, Eleanor Roosevelt, Cole Porter, Joe DiMaggio, a whole bunch of other people you've heard of. And the picture on the right is the commercial kitchen where chocolate chip cookies were invented. Excuse me. As a matter of fact, Ruth Wakefield oversaw a large staff, including chefs, so it's not even clear that she would have been the hands-on inventor of chocolate chip cookies. Now, as much as businesses are an integral part of American culture, the character of these businesses might have changed over time. On the left is another shot of the Toll House Inn and a Thanksgiving dinner that Ruth Wakefield served to her guests on Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, that building is no longer there, and on the right is the Wendy's restaurant that now stands in that place and some of the food that you can get there. And next door to that is a Walgreens, and across the street is a 7-Eleven. Now, we as a nation are dealing with some pretty weighty issues. Global climate change, nuclear proliferation. And it seems to me that the national discussions that we're having about these issues always seem to focus on just escaping from the negative consequences. And if we have any goals at all, they're very incremental. Seems to me like the last time we had a real big national goal we were all working towards may have been the Apollo moonshot. So this is a graph of the average score of the 11 chocolate chip cookie recipes that we baked versus the year the recipes were published. And you can see, aside from Ruth Wakefield's original recipe from the 30s, there's a clear upward trend. And one interpretation is that tastes change and the more recent recipes we just prefer. But an interpretation that I like better is that we're getting better at making chocolate chip cookies. And if you do a linear fit through the data, you can see we should get to a perfect 10 cookie in the year 2040. And it might not be the most lofty of national goals, but it's a date that I'm looking forward to. So. Thank you very much. If anyone has a smartphone, you can try to capture the 2 recipes we talked about with these QR codes. So, thank you.